Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into something I think literally every single one of us deals with on a daily basis. We are tackling the ultimate daily struggle, and that is balancing our money versus our time. It's the classic trade-off, so let's just dive right into it. So tell me if this sounds familiar. Have you ever wondered why saving a few bucks often leaves us feeling completely drained, frustrated, and just wondering if it was really worth the effort in the first place? You know the drill. You hunt down the absolute cheapest option online, you finally hit buy, or maybe you decide to take the DIY route to save some cash. And then, suddenly, your entire weekend is completely gone, you're covered in paint or grease, and you're just standing there questioning all of your life choices. You're super stressed, you're exhausted, and you're thinking, why does this always happen? Well, the core of that frustration really comes down to something we call the trade-off illusion. Now, you already know the surface level problem here, right? Both money and time are limited resources. But the real difficulty isn't just bad math. It's the fact that money and time behave like two completely different currencies, and they never convert cleanly into one another. The thing is, money is highly visible. You look at a receipt and boom, the price tag is staring right back at you. Time, on the other hand, is completely hidden. It disappears in these tiny, almost invisible little pieces. It gets lost when you're just standing around waiting, or in context switching, or trying to coordinate plans, or simply recovering from a long task. We essentially get fooled because we are only seeing half of the transaction up front. To really make sense of this illusion, we have to look at the very nature of the two resources driving every single choice we make. Money is basically stored potential. You can think of it like water in a giant tank. You can hold it back, you can save it for a rainy day, redirect it, or drain it. It just sits there, perfectly still, until you decide to use it. But time is fundamentally different. Time is a flowing scarcity. Think of it like a fast-moving river. You absolutely cannot put it in a bank to save for later. It just keeps flowing by whether you're using it well or not. So when you try your hardest to protect the water sitting safely in your tank, you are very often implicitly agreeing to spend the water that's rapidly flowing down your river. A great way to think about your time and attention is to picture counter space in a kitchen. Now, you might technically have all the right ingredients to cook a great meal, but if your counter is literally buried under a mountain of dirty pots and pans, even something as simple as chopping an onion becomes an absolute nightmare. Well, time works the exact same way. When your attention and your daily schedule are totally crowded, even modest, supposedly cheap tasks become incredibly costly to your mental load and your overall energy. And that brings us to an absolutely crucial point. A decision is not just a single point in time, it is a path. When people compare money and time, they usually make the mistake of just comparing the starting line. They'll look at two options and say, well, this one costs more or that one takes longer. But the real decision isn't just that first step. You aren't just buying an outcome, you are actually buying a future shape of effort. A choice is really a whole bundle of consequences that get stretched out over your future. Let's actually break down the mechanics of this because it's super interesting. We can map out these decisions into four distinct shapes of trade-off. First, you have cheap but slow. With this one, you are basically paying with your patience. And hey, that is totally fine if time is plentiful for you right now. But contrast that with expensive but fast. Here you are paying a premium for convenience and speed, which is a brilliant move if time happens to be your biggest bottleneck. Then we get into the tricky ones. Cheap now, costly later means the deal you just got actually creates a bunch of future work for you. And finally, expensive now, cheaper later means you're paying a high upfront cost, specifically to buy simplicity, durability, or leverage down the road. The real trick here is recognizing these as entirely different operating systems rather than just comparing different price tags. So let's look closer at exactly how that cheap, now costly later trap actually springs shut on us. Why does the cheap option so often become wildly expensive in the end? Honestly, it's an avalanche of hidden taxes. First off, you have repetition. You have to deal with the exact same issue again and again because the cheap fix didn't hold. Then there's coordination. Think about all the time you spend arranging, confirming, chasing down parts, or fixing things. Then you've got maintenance, which is just the everyday effort required to keep that cheap thing barely working. After that comes recovery, the actual time you spend trying to undo a bad fit. And finally, the big one, lost opportunity. When you go for the absolute cheapest option, you aren't actually saving. You are very often just importing a ton of future friction for tomorrow's version of yourself to deal with. This realization completely shifts how we should be defining value. Value isn't just what you get out of a transaction. It is what you keep. The time you get to keep, the attention you keep, the energy you keep. Actually, paying a higher upfront price can be remarkably efficient if it protects your most incredibly scarce resources. If making an expensive choice prevents annoying interruptions to your workday, stops you from losing focus, and avoids a bunch of future mistakes and delays, it might actually be the cheapest decision you could possibly make. You're reducing the total drag on your entire system. Let's bring this down to earth with a real-world example from our source material. Imagine someone living in the UAE who is trying to choose between paying a premium for rapid delivery of some items or saving a bit of money by just driving out to multiple stores themselves. Now, at first glance, obviously, driving yourself is cheaper. But think about it. If they have to navigate through heavy traffic, hunt down a parking spot, wander around searching for the items, and then drive all the way back, that time cost gets very real very quickly. If the actual money they saved is pretty modest, but the whole process consumed their one and only evening for rest, family time, or focused work, then the real cost of that trip is massive. So the question we should be asking isn't just which one costs less, it's really which choice protects the scarce resource I need the most right now. It's the exact same decision, but with a different bottleneck, you get an entirely different answer. And all of this brings us to this really fascinating mirror effect. At the end of the day, we are simply choosing how to convert one scarce resource into another kind of advantage. Money is very often just a tool for buying back time. You use it to buy simplicity, reliability, and to completely reduce your decision fatigue. Conversely, time is a tool for reducing future money costs. You use your time to learn a new skill, to take control of a process, and to lower your overall spending. Neither of these paths is universally better or worse than the other. It's just a conversion process that's entirely based on what you have right now and what you need. So I really want to challenge you for a second here. Take a look at your own life and the decisions you've got sitting on your plate today. What bottleneck are you personally trying to relieve? Because scarcity is the exact thing that gives each of these resources its power. Are you currently heavily protecting your wallet because, hey, funds are tight right now? Or do you desperately need to protect your sanity, your focus, and your schedule because time is your real bottleneck? You have to honestly identify what is actually scarce for you right now before you can accurately judge your very next trade-off. All right, we've reached the ultimate test. Before you finalize any decision where money and time are pulling you in opposite directions, I want you to ask yourself this one provocative question. Does this choice actually simplify my life, or does it complicate it? Don't just stare at the price tag. Look at the entire shape of your future workload. Complexity is sneaky. It consumes time even when it feels like nothing is actively happening. If a choice makes your future decisions easier and removes daily friction, it may be worth far, far more than its asking price. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope you leave today with a much sharper mental model, totally ready to look past the price tag and start looking at the actual path ahead. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.